Hello, welcome. Thank you all for joining. We are going to get this webinar here on Itree and the urban forestry started in just 1 second. Let everybody go ahead and sign in and get settled and get ready, and we're just going to start in just 1 second here. So thank you. All right, looks like almost everybody has arrived. Most people are figuring it out. So thank you for joining us today, wherever you're signing in. I know some people it's early in the morning and some people it's in the afternoon. Really excited to be here on today's webinar. This is the third webinar in our Planning the Urban Forest summer webinar series with the conjunction with Tricanthus and Itree. I'm going to go over just a couple software, logistics, housekeeping items for you. Just so you know, this webinar is being recorded. So at the end, all attendees and registrants will receive a link to the recording that you can view at a later time and share with colleagues as you see fit. We are going to do live question and answers at the end of it. So on your GoToWebinar toolbar, there is a question box right there. So you can use that to ask questions throughout the whole presentation. Some of them that we can answer easily, we'll go ahead and answer on the fly for you behind the scenes. And some that are best left for Al and John, we will go ahead and answer at the end live. So I encourage you to go ahead and ask questions early and often, and we have plenty of time at the end here for question and answers. In the event that we can't get to all the questions, we'll try our best to reach out to you individually and answer those questions. So maybe it's always fun for me and us to see maybe where you're calling in from these days. So you can go ahead and type in there and tell us where you're calling in from. That's always exciting to see. I know we have a very broad audience here today, internationally speaking. We are going to be doing some interactive polling throughout the presentation to help us know who is out there and what your level of knowledge is with Itree and urban forestry. Just helps us a lot. So just go ahead and answer those polls when they come up. We leave them up for about 30 to 45 seconds. At the end of the webinar, you will receive an ISA CEU code on the last slide, as well as you'll receive a link to a follow-up survey where we can get your feedback to make sure that this webinar was good for you. And in that survey is an opportunity to provide your name and your ISA CEU should you like to. And then if you want, then I'll go ahead and submit those CEU requests for you so you don't have to self-report it. On your toolbar, you should also see an option to download a handout. We have a PDF of the presentation up there, so you can download that when you want for future reference as well. And in your follow-up survey and email, along with the recording, you'll also get a certificate of completion if you want to use that for follow-up CEUs for maybe something outside of ISA. So with that, I think we are ready to get started here. So again, this is our third webinar on planning of the urban forest. This one is particularly exciting because Itree, as many of you know, is what helped founded Tricanthus, and Itree is a founding partner in collaboration with the United States Forest Service and many other partners. It's a tool that many of us use daily, and we're excited to talk about it. So we have Al Zalai with the Davey Institute here, and then we have John Ryan with Islington and the UK to tell us how he's actually applied Itree. And I have to apologize that you're stuck with me, Josh Bohanek with Davey Resource Group as your moderator. Kenton with Tricanthus was supposed to be moderating, but he had to call in sick, so you're stuck with me. So, all right, next slide, Al. Al, can you change slides? There we go, thanks. So again, we're talking Itree in the urban forest, and right now I'm going to go ahead and introduce Al Zelaya. So Al, you are up and ready to go.
Thank you, Josh. Appreciate the introduction. And thank you all for joining us today, wherever you may be. And thank you to the folks also at Tricanthus. It's good to see some old faces and friends, and happy to share a little bit about Itree with you today. And if you join the first two sessions, I will try to sometimes reference back to those because a lot of the same themes you'll kind of hear throughout my presentation. And so I was going to today just kind of set the stage for John and talk a little bit about Itree and some of the work that I've done. I mostly work on the technical support side, so I don't do a lot of projects, but I help many other people around the world use the Itree suite of tools. And I've been doing that now for about 12 years now, actually. So I've seen quite a bit and worked with a wide range of audiences, and I'm always here to help folks, and that's what I do on a daily basis, is help people around the world use these tools. So we'll start, and I'll dive right in a little bit about background about Itree, because I know that we have folks from all over, and some may have never heard of Itree, and how does this tool fit in urban forest master planning, and how can it be used to better plan tree planting, as Keith was talking about, trying to be more strategic. And Itree is one of these tools that we think can help you. This is a software suite of tools which was developed by the U.S. Forest Service and a number of partners, all kind of listed at the bottom there. And we have many more collaborators that we work with now around the world too. And so they're science-based software tools. There's a number of different applications that are available. They're based on research papers, and we also provide technical support for these tools, which is important because we realize that some of these tools can be challenging for users to use, and they are dynamic, and by that I mean they are continuously changing as new science becomes available, and we're capable of integrating that into the applications. They get updated, and that could be both good and bad. If you have projects in progress, it can create some challenges. But all in all, it's been a fairly good experience to be able to help people, use these tools and really see how they've been able to flourish and advance their programs. So we like to again use the term assessing and managing. And so we are, folks might be familiar with tree inventory tools, which is kind of a common tool for just having a basic understanding of what type of tree resource you may have. We like to view Itree as a complementary tool to that when it was first introduced in 2006. So, we did not want to displace tools that were already in the market and they're proprietary tools, but we wanted to provide and add on services that foresters, consultants, and others could use to actually have an improved understanding of the tree resource and make better management decisions. So we like to kind of use this term, putting urban forest science in the hands of users, and that's somewhat of our goal. But also the vision is not just about trees and forests, it's about people too. And I like to use the term people matter most, especially when it comes with dealing with the urban forests. So we also are interested in not only improving forest health and tree management, but human health and the resiliency of cities. And how we try to achieve that is by developing technology that really anybody can use. And so we like to use the term all lands, all people. So whether you're interested in a tree in your backyard or the entire tree resource of your city, there's usually a tool that can be applied to get you to that point. So I like to start with why first, and I'll tie back into some of the terms that you use if you participated in the first seminar, which was on master planning, that Josh talked about being inclusive and having stakeholders at the table, and then Keith talked about being strategic and having better decision making in your planning for tree plantings. And so that term being strategic is something that I always kind of use frequently when I work with Itree. And the idea here is that, we have to be more strategic. When I was young and I used to do budgets, when I was a parks manager, I used to always just, my strategy was ask for way more than I knew I was going to receive, and hopefully I'd get something. And sometimes that actually worked, but most times it didn't. So the idea is, if we can, have tools that help us identify what it is we need, and then tether that to things that are important to society, whether that be public health, air quality improvement, stormwater management, we're more likely to get traction. So, that's being strategic. And then we're able to move beyond that and advance and improve urban forest management policies, preservation policies. And I know and somebody asked about funding. Well, how do you do that? Well, this is part of that package too. Once you can start making these connections, then there's the ability to justify program funding and investment. And then making decisions once we know which are the trees that are providing the most benefits, where are the people most in need in our city, we can start optimizing our decision making. So there's many different ways and reasons why we can use Itree. And then in addition to that, there are also, secondary things that you might think about: improving economic opportunities, attracting new businesses, raising a tax base by improving aesthetics of neighborhoods. Some of the folks that I work with now overseas, like in the Philippines, they're interested in green tourism. So we're trying to use Itree, working with resorts and trying to promote the benefits of trees and make the connection to trees in urban areas and the importance of the rural forests too. So many different reasons why Itree can be used. And much of that just comes with starting to understand, what are the objectives that are important to you. So I'm going to talk just a little bit today, mostly because I have a limited amount of time. I'm going to focus on the tools that are internationally applicable. And so this is a kind of a schematic of the Itree tools that Dr. Nowak made up, who is the Itree lead program manager and the original developer of many of these models. And you can kind of see just the relationship. So we have core programs and what we call utilities, which are more simpler tools, mostly online tools. And you can see some of the relationships that they have. And so ECO kind of has a lot more arrows pointing out to it. And that is a key tool for us. We use that tool to develop and serve up information that can be more accessible in some of our online tools like Itree Design and Itree, MyTree, and Planting. Unfortunately, many of those tools aren't applicable or available for overseas use and are only available for use in the US and in some cases Canada. We're constantly looking at ways of making those tools available internationally though too. So I'm going to focus on those tools that are highlighted. ECO, and you can see that ECO has a relationship with Canopy. So we use ECO to derive some of the ecosystem services that you can find in Itree Canopy. Database is a way, if you are in Moldova, if you're in Lima, Peru, if you are in Tashkent, Uzbekistan, wherever you may be, if you can provide us with some information about your location, pollution data, and precipitation data, there's actually a way that we can build in the information needed so that your city can be functional in ECO. So I'll talk a little bit about that later too. So that's what I'm going to focus on today, and that kind of brings us to our first poll question, which will help me understand a little bit more about your familiarity with Itree. So I'll let Josh kind of run this here.
Great, thanks, Al. Yeah, so just seeing how familiar you are with, let's let everybody get comfortable. It looks like people are figuring it out. So go ahead and I usually like to say vote early, vote often, but I was told by my wife to stop using that joke because it's not appropriate. But anyway, go ahead and get that vote in. Leave it open just for a couple more seconds here. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and close it out and share out the results. And Al, looks like Quite a few, 90% have some at least familiarity with Itree, and a growing majority of people are starting to really use it. But looks like what I think we normally see that still are aware of it, but really haven't been able to grasp and use it yet.
Yeah, and it can be a challenge, especially for some of the more complex tools to take on. And as I always say, start small and then work your way up. And that's kind of a good philosophy that I work with folks when I first introduce them to Itree. So yeah, that was very helpful for me. Okay, thank you, Josh, and thank you for participating to all our delegates. So I'll start with Itree Eco, which is that core tool. And so this is a field-based assessment tool, meaning that, yeah, we actually have to have some information about the tree forest resource to use this model. And in many cases, some cities may already have a tree inventory, which we can now more easily import into Eco. And then if you don't, it has all the series of protocols for data collection. There is what we like to call a mobile system for collecting data if you need, which can be used with a smartphone or a tablet or other devices. And this really is the most dynamic tool that we have. So it is always constantly changing as new science becomes available, and which is why it is the underlying application that's used to power so many of our other applications. We've been on a mission over the past decade to try to make this the engine for all tools so that we could have consistency across all applications. In the past, we've had other tools. Some folks may be familiar with Itree Streets, which also produce estimates, which were used in some of our online tools, and that kind of created some conflicts in estimates. So we're trying to get uniformity across platforms. That's more of a journey and a process, which is always in progress. And as I mentioned, the one good thing about this particular tool is that it is internationally applicable. So we can use this and adapt it for use pretty much anywhere if we can get information that the model needs. It's really used by such a wide range of users now, from cities originally, park managers and consultants use it frequently, but a lot of non-government organizations also use it. And then students, researchers, even corporations. And so a lot of innovators use this tool to develop their own tools too. And so originally when Itree was first, before we became Itree, it was called the Urban Forest Effects Model, developed for cities only, and it was a plot-based system, very cumbersome, had a lot of data requirements. It's been modified now, and it's more adaptable for small scale projects. So if you were interested in one tree in your backyard, you can use Itree Eco. If you were interested in an entire resource, there's sampling protocols, say for a city of London size, which has been done by Tricanthus and other partners, that can be done too. So it's become a much more universally and flexible tool over time. And so what exactly does it assess? And so we like to use the term structure, function, and value a lot whenever you hear one of us talk about Itree. And it really does start with tree structure. And so it not only takes just some of the basic information that you might find from a tree inventory, like species composition and condition of the resource, but we're also interested in things like leaf area and tree biomass, size distribution of the resource. And then that information is used to estimate functional analysis, so air quality improvement through pollution removal and interception, energy effects, trees in relationship to buildings, carbon storage and sequestration, a number of different hydrology effects. And there's more. We're constantly always adding these, but sometimes these come with limitations. For example, we had a habitat suitability model, but that was part of only a smaller amount of research, so it's just limited to only a few avian species. And so, that researchers trying to get more funding to expand that out. But we, put that in there now, and it's available, but it's mostly limited for North American bird species. So there's a number of functional analysis, and then we try to value these also where we can, assigning monetary values based on economic models. And then there's more recently some management information. What are the pest risks? And then you have some optional fields which we've added in for folks to use this tool if they wanted to collect some very basic information. It's not designed to be a full-blown asset management, tracking histories. That is more of a tree inventory type tool. So Itree does have its limits. That's what you use to determine an assessment tool. And it also can do some forecasting and cost benefit analysis. So we can kind of weigh and balance the benefits versus all the costs and see, you know, are we getting money back for the money we're investing in managing a tree resource. One thing to note is that ECO has been adapted for whole country integration. So the United Kingdom is fully integrated through the work of Tree Economics Partnership and also Forestry Research. And then other countries, Australia, Canada, more recently, Colombia, Mexico, and South Korea, and most of Europe now too, through the work of other collaborators working with our team to provide a whole lot of information that we need: pollution data, location information, weather information, to have whole countries. So any cities in those countries can be used in Itree Eco, and then there's a pathway for individual global cities. So I thought I'd focus a little bit just about the model framework, which will kind of maybe hopefully help you understand how this differs and how some of the information can be used strategically. And it does start with that field data information, you know, that basic information: tree species, the diameter of the trunk. But then ECO also allows you to enter more information, which allows us to be more accurate, such as tree height, the width of the canopy, and there are a number of other tree variables which can be used. And what this allows us to do is to estimate foliage volume and wood volume. And then the model uses equations to estimate leaf surface area. Many of the benefits of Itree are derived from the interaction of leaf surface area in its local environment. So air pollution, precipitation, radiation. And so we use hourly pollution, hourly weather data, information about the location to model these interactions at hourly time intervals for a whole year. And so the model handles all that part and then returns these different modules where it'll give us estimates on how much carbon is being sequestered annually, how much is being stored, air quality improvement, stormwater effects and the energy effects. And then there are a number of other different modules in there. More recently, we've added a forecasting component, but that is only limited to a carbon, air quality, and then structural analysis. And in the future, we'll probably add in hydrology. So that's just the kind of the basic framework. And Itree databases you see at the top there. So if you're not one of those whole countries that were listed, like Australia, the UK, and Canada, there's a pathway where you can provide us with the pollution data and precipitation data and location information to have your city integrated in a future version. And so that's somewhat of the framework of how the data moves from tree inventory to actually the analysis process. And so that structure and functional relationship is really important. And this is just a kind of an idea of you know, how that plays out. And this is just based off, I think, about 9,500 trees from the town of Rochester, Minnesota's downtown areas. And just looking at 2 trees that we kind of cut out from that analysis, up at the top, Acer Sakarinum silver maples, a very common street tree, out of favor with tree managers here because it's somewhat fast growing, weak wooded, a messy tree. You don't see it planted anymore, but it's pretty dominant throughout the landscape still. And so roughly about 250 trees in this particular inventory. And you can see the basal area, which is representative of the cross-sectional area of the trees in that area, is about 613 square feet, compared with one of the other trees, honey locust, Ladicia Tricanthus, which is a very common street tree, loved by landscape planners because of the compound leaflets, which allow for dappled shade. It's a fantastic tree. I'm looking at one right now outside my window. And you can see a lot more, 623. So the basal area of that, meaning that cross-sectional diameter of that tree, there's a lot more, and that is reflected in the carbon storage to the left, where we see honey locust has a higher value. But the model looks at leaf area again. And so the differences in the structure of the trees and the leaves, the leaflet compared to the honey locust compared to the leaf surface area of the silver maple, we have more leaf area, even though we have a significantly lower amount of silver maples. So when we look at the resource through the prism of stormwater, those silver maples are providing us with more services. And that also holds true for pollution, which tends to look at leaf areas interaction. And as I mentioned, that happens at an hourly time step. So this is just to give you an idea of, some of the sophistication of the model. In the background, it has hourly ozone concentration information for a year, and then we also have the hourly precipitation, and you can access all this information within ECO, and then it shows us the hourly air quality improvement. So we can see throughout this particular year where you see more of the activity is just because that's when you have trees leafed out in a northern town in North America. And then going beyond that, how is that information put of use? Not only are we looking at the interaction of leaf surface in its local environment, but then we're looking at the interaction of the human population. And again, getting back to trying to connect this with people. And so we can see, what is the population of this particular city? What are the characteristics of the population at risk, old people, young people, to air quality issues. And this is how we value pollution now, based on a U.S. Environmental Protection Agency model that looks at incidence reduction related to pollutant concentration reduction. And so it's how this particular model is valued. This would be different throughout the world, though, and that's one of the things that our environmental modeler is working on with Dave Nowak to try to find a way to adapt this, because it has to do a lot about population dynamics, human population dynamics, but also healthcare costs too. But for us, it's important because it allows us to now make a new connection, connecting trees to human health concerns. So that's become a valuable connection for us more recently in that ever-ending quest to how can we be more strategic and finding ways to connect trees to things that are of concern to people. So real quickly, I just wanted to talk a little bit about a couple of projects, just to give you an example. And more recently, we've worked in Mexico City, where we've introduced Itree Eco in 2018, working with the U.S. Forest Service International programs, local cooperators, including INAFAP, which is agricultural agency. One of the first projects that they focused on was a high-profile park. And this, to me, is always a good, again, strategic decision, something where people go and understand this resource from the perspective of, boy, this is a great place where we go to relax on weekends or when it's too hot to get away and be in nature. And so they wanted to start working in this area to find more information about the tree resource, but also to improve management and find new ways of engaging. So that's just some of the preliminary information that they have. It's an ongoing project where they're working on sections of the park, but then you can also go to an online map and click on a section of that park and then find out information about that tree resource. And it also has links, as you can see at the bottom, so that you can make that connection to see how this relates to things of concern to Mexico. There are a lot of challenges that they're facing, including air quality, climate change impacts, access to water. There are no shortage of challenges, but this is something that they're using to try to understand the resource more, to improve management, but also improve funding of that by using engagement. And then other folks who attended that inaugural class have gone on to use the tool in the same way. And in Mexico, it's very rare to see folks that have tree inventories much more sophisticated analysis tools. And then in this case, the city of Colima using Itree to understand the tree resource and the benefits that it's providing. And then saying, what are these benefits that are most important to our city, and integrating that into a management plan. So again, having metrics that they can measure and go back and say, are we achieving this is important, but also improving the decision-making process. So I mentioned for folks that weren't, that you may be viewing from a city that isn't in one of those integrated countries, Itree database. In many individuals have used this already to set up their cities in Itree Eco. So you can actually go to this page right here where database is, and then there's a link on there that shows the global cities that are integrated in already. And so New Delhi, Bangkok, but even places in Africa, South America, individual cities can be found that have pollution and weather data that are viable. So you can use the tool in those cities the same way that you could in New York or in London and any other city that's fully integrated. And if you don't have that, then the information we would need would be location, city, some pollution and precipitation data. I don't have time to go into all the details on that, but there are templates there that show you, what exactly you need, and we can help you with that. But typically that's a process that takes a few months to do. And usually we see that endeavor taken on by many students throughout the world. So there's a pathway if ECO isn't functional in your city, in your global city, to get there. And then it also will work partially. So you may not have pollution data today, but you might have it in a year. You could still work with the model, but it won't have pollution estimates. So there are always options to consider. So that's a bit about ECO. I just wanted to talk a little bit briefly about Itree Canopy, and I know John is going to talk a little bit more about this when he discusses some of the work in Islington. But this is the other tool, and it's actually our most popular Itree tool because it's online. It doesn't require loading software, and it can pretty much be used just about anywhere depending on the quality of Google imagery that it serves up in the application. So this is an online survey tool that generates random points in an area of interest, and then you look at where that point lands in your area of interest and determine what cover class that is. You decide what are the cover classes of interest to you. It may be something as simple as tree canopy, impervious surface, water, bare ground, or it could be more sophisticated if you're interested in trying to find available planting space. This is then a tool that could be used for that purpose. And again, going back to better decision making. So many people have goals. We're going to improve our canopy to 45%, but if you ask them if they know what their canopy is now, well, that's a bit of a head scratcher sometimes. This is a tool that can get you there rather quickly, and then also help you understand what is an achievable practical goal based on available planting space tool. So a very simple tool to use, and typically within a half day after surveying, say 500 to 1,000 points, you will have an estimate of your canopy cover with a standard error, which is the accuracy of the estimate within, say, maybe like about 2%. And that depends too on the distribution of vegetation. So it's a great way to understand what your resource is, find out, what are the potentials for expanding that, but you can also look at the historical change too by using secondary tools like Google Earth. And what I like to say is that it's a good way to visually connect land with people. So, when I use this with folks, and you can start to see how development has changed where they live, and visually, they can kind of see that, and then it makes them more engaged to find out, well, what is our canopy cover and how has it changed? And if you recall in that one slide where I showed you the relationship of the tools, you can see here that this is that tool that gets ecosystem service information from Itree Eco, but that is based on US parameters. So you have to be careful It can generate them if you're using this overseas, but it's difficult to justify. So when I work with international audiences, I tell them to be careful, and then in most cases to work with the information about the resource that it's going to provide, but to be careful about using the monetary estimates that it's providing, because it is all based on U.S. locations and takes consideration of U.S. county level population, human population, but also forest resource dynamics. And it's very difficult to make that connection. I know that Tree Economics has been working with the U.S. Forest Service to make that piece of the canopy more functional for the UK bill. So that's something that Kenton asked me to make sure I mention. The status of that to me is still unknown, but that's something that we're trying to do. And I know that John's going to talk a little bit about canopy cover, and I just wanted to focus on something that's a little bit non-traditional. This is Cairo, Egypt, where I've done some work working with the Forest Service international programs. And in many places like this, I know I saw somebody registered from Dhaka, Bangladesh, where you have informal settlements. This concept of available planting space is, literally non-existent. And Ted and Drenny, who works with our team at Syracuse University, did a Itree canopy survey of the 10 megacities of the world and looked at canopy cover, but also available or potential planting space. And so, for Cairo, you can see to the right, he determined that the tree canopy was a little bit underneath 8%, but there was a potential of over 20%. But in cities, that's very difficult. And what you'll find is available tree planting space might be in areas where you already have tree cover, parks or open squares or agricultural fields if you're considering that planting space. But in these areas, it's very difficult. There really is no available planting space, or it's at a very premium cost there, which isn't going to be achieved. And so working with the local collaborators, we then just adapted this tool to look at what they have is a massive amount of flat roof space that could be turned into rooftop gardens. And so working with organizations at American University in Cairo, other NGOs, you can see we estimated canopy cover, but then we also estimated potential green roofs. And so that was just a little bit under 25. And again, it's like available planting space. It's something that would require ground truthing because you don't know the capacity of holding, but it's something, again, here, going back to that same concept of understanding what do we have, what would we like to have, how do we get there, and then how are we doing? That somewhat same process of adaptive management, applying those same principles, not so much for tree cover, but roof cover in this particular case, and using some of the same tools. Now moving to taking a set of inventories of trees, inventories of green roofs, finding out what types of systems, plants, and then developing a network so they can expand. But this is just taking a tool that we have for tree cover and adapting it for a use that is a more critical concern for that locality. So it's just a way that you can take a tool, thinking outside, being more of an innovator. And that brings me to my last poll question, which I'll hand over to Josh.
Great, thanks, Al. I love that Egypt example, and I want to point out that, while the benefits from Itree canopy might not necessarily translate over, the tool, like you said, tool definitely works, and the accuracy of the tree canopy is still there. So as long as you have good Google imagery, right? So. All right, so just curious, how many of you know what your tree canopy cover is? Again, leave this open just for a couple seconds here. Getting a lot of really good questions. I think we're going to have a robust Q&A session, so feel free to keep typing those in. Lots of good questions out here about what tools can be used in different countries and some training. So we'll get to those. But all right, I'm going to go ahead and close this out now. And kind of a little surprising to me that 50% of the people, Al, don't know what their canopy cover is.
Yeah, so that's an opportunity there, right? Half-day investment of time. All right, well, I'll wrap this up, Josh. Thanks for that, and thanks for your participation. And in closing, the common question is, well, how do I learn more? This is just a snapshot, and thank you for your attention. The best place to start is on our website, where we have a number of learning videos, which to me are way more effective, but we still have a massive amount of documentation, examples of reports, and method documents to help you through. So you can always visit us. You can always get a hold of me. My contact information will be there, and I'll be happy to help you. So I thank you for listening, and I'll turn it over to John to share some more information about what he's been doing in Islington.
Great, thanks, Al. Yeah, so all right, John, I can see yours. And Al, I know you joke, but I do think of you as the Itree tow truck driver there. So you're really good at pulling me and other people out of the mud when we get into it with Itree. So
yeah, could be some technical challenges.
All right, so now we're going to transition. Now that we've kind of learned about Itree and a couple of the key tools, I joke that Itree used to take 2 days to tell people what it is, and we got Al down to 25 minutes. So good job. All right, we're going to transition over to John in Islington, and he's going to show us on the applied side of it in real world. So John, I can see your screen. I think I can hear you. So take it away.
Hi, thank you, Josh. Thank you, Al. And good afternoon or good morning to everyone, depending on where you are today. How are you all? I hope you and your loved ones are all well during these very unusual times we're going through. I've got about 20 minutes with you, or just under, so I'm going to move quite quickly, but I'll be more than happy to answer any questions you may have at the end. And I must explain, like many people in the UK at the moment, I'm working from home, so please do excuse me if a dog or child decides to interrupt. They've been kicked out, but yeah, it's happened. My name is John Ryan. I'm the Arboricultural Manager for Islington Council. I want to talk to you about how we've used the urban forest data provided by Itree that Al's been telling us about. And just to provide some context for you quickly, in case you were wondering, where is Islington? What does an arboricultural manager do, and why is this person talking to me? Islington is in London, which is the capital of the UK, and I still consider myself to be part of Europe. It's the little green blob here. London is divided into separate boroughs, managed by individual local government councils, so our budgets are set locally as well as nationally, and Islington is this green blob in the middle here, just above the wiggly line that is the Thames. Now, it's a small borough. It's only 15 square kilometres approximately, or 5 square miles for our American cousins. It's a very urban, densely populated part of inner city London. It's got a large population for its size. There's 250,000 people squeezed into there. To give you some idea of scale, the oval here in the middle with a rectangle in the middle, that's the home of Arsenal Football Club. That's the Emirates. So it's not a big place. What do I do? Well, I'm the Arboricultural Manager for Islington Council. I manage a team of 8 that look after the publicly owned trees. It's about 40,000 trees. And our job is to protect and enhance that tree stock. We look after the street trees, the parks trees. We've got the smallest amount of parks in any of the central London boroughs. So there's no big green blobs on that map, you'll notice. No big parks, no big recreation grounds. We look after the housing trees and all the other trees on council land. They're managed on a 3-year cycle of inspection and works. But we get to see them a lot more than that because the place is so small. Roughly half of Islington is private trees, so protected by law. Private trees that are also protected by law. So they're in conservation areas or tree preservation orders. So we manage applications to work on those private trees as well. We also manage the protection of trees through the planning process. So that's trees on development sites, and we manage the mitigation for tree loss, and we also help to steer new policy in relation to trees. So that's it on plan. What does it look like? Well, it's a mixture of wealthy residential with big green open spaces, big green gardens, and some very business areas towards the south, and a medieval street layout towards the south as well, and some quite large areas of social deprivation. Okay, well, that's Islington. I'm here today basically as a favour for Tricanthus. They've done some great work for Islington. I'm here to support Itree because it's a great tool. And as somebody who spent their life working with urban trees, over 30 years, I can clearly see the applications for better management and protecting of trees. So I'm not a salesman for Itree or Tricanthus. I'm an advocate and an end user. I'm also here to shamelessly promote the work that Islington Tree Council do, supporting other councils and tree owners through tree inspection. So what did I want? Well, I'd seen the Itree presentations, much like ours, over the years, and I became familiar with the work that Kenton and Tricanthus were doing in London, and I wanted some of that. You know, I wanted greater knowledge. The greater knowledge I have of my tree stock, the better I can defend it and manage it. But I also not only need that knowledge, I need it in a format that I can present to people to support the management and protection of the trees under my care. First thing I needed to accurately know is where the trees are, and specifically the canopy cover, and I'll go back into that again in a minute. Then what's their value? You know, it's not enough nowadays to know that trees are good. People who inherently think trees are good, they're already on my side. I need to convince people who aren't bothered about trees or have negative issues with trees that the trees are good and valuable, that the benefits of trees outweigh the negatives. And yeah, then I wanted to know all the values that we've just learned from Al that Itree can produce, so I won't go into those. Now that tells me how hard they're working. Why do I need to know that? Well, not only so I can justify my existence to the budget holders, to prove what an excellent job we're doing at managing the asset for them, but also to prove what a fantastic job the trees are doing for the residents of Islington, for making it a better place to live, a healthier and more resilient place to live. So I want an evidence base. What am I going to do with that evidence base? Well, I'm going to use it. Firstly, I've got an outdated tree strategy, and I've got some references in council policy to trees, but I want to evidence-base that. I want a new urban forest master plan for Islington. I want the facts and values to influence this. So rather than a wish list based on what I think I have, I want targets that are quantified, achievable, and based on fact. I mean, the quickest way to lose support is to set targets that you can't reach, and to do that more than once. Okay, so trust, that brings me on to trust. Well, I feel we've lost a bit of public trust in the management of trees, or public trees, in the UK. And there's numerous reasons for that, but I'll touch on a few. We've had budget cuts for the last 10 years, and that's seen a decline in public engagement. And this has coincided with a rising sense of awareness on environmental and climatic issues in the general population. There's lots of people, many people care about the environment, but don't feel enabled to do anything about it in their locality. So when they see a tree being removed, for valid reasons often, they will often kick off. Having the correct data and having that in a way that you can convince people that you have a plan, that you are managing things correctly, you know what you're doing, is so useful. I particularly hate social media attacks, and they're becoming more and more commonplace. We've had to become adept at countering negative press and attitudes, and the best way to do that is have information and evidence. Also, better tree management. I mean, this is not just professional pride. I want to be able to manage my trees better, and I want that for my team as well. We want to be at the forefront of innovation and driving positive change where we live, and the best way to do that is have that information. Asset management is a massive deal for me, especially where we've had budgets that have been squeezed over years. I annually have to justify my budgets, but also I need to search around and try and find new sources of money. And a good example of this is the health budget. Once I can prove and quantify the positive health effects of trees, I can access health budgets. Now, in London, pollution is in focus at the moment. We have a pollution problem here. And I'll be looking at accessing public health fund to plant and maintain trees, because I can prove the benefits of those trees on pollution capture. Risk management is a large part of my job. My senior management here, they absolutely love risk management. They don't like surprises. I need to be able to more accurately put figures to risk. And one of the big risks we have, financial risks we have in Islington with trees, is subsidence damage to property. So clay soil shrinkage and differential movement to property caused by vegetation dehydrating the subsoil. With the values that Itree produces, I can now demonstrate the benefits of those large canopy trees, and that they're exponentially more beneficial to the environment than the smaller trees, and therefore worth protecting. Now, this gives them weight so that I can use that as leverage to gain the correct evidence before trees are removed. Yeah, it's all good. So the future. Now, I also need to plan, and the knowledge and the evidence base that I'm going to get allows me to plan more accurately on what the treescape is going to look like. Trees take time, and we need to predict what the future may bring. Now, London already is 2 degrees warmer than the surrounding countryside, so climate change is already affecting us. We need to know what trees we've got and be able to predict what's going to happen in the future and plant accordingly. So we want to look at species that we know is going to thrive in the climates they're predicting in 20, 50, 70 years' time. What are our large canopy trees going to be then? What trees won't make it? What invasive trees and invasive pests and diseases are coming, and how's that going to affect my tree stock? But aside from that, also, we need to think about the impact of driverless cars, less cars, the mass installation of power charging points for electric cars. Is that going to create more places for street tree planting for me? All these things. If I know where my trees are and I know what they're doing, I can start to plan. Okay, what did I get? Well, I commissioned Tricanthus to produce a canopy cover assessment, an inventory on the publicly owned trees, and a tree planting strategy. And I also got some extras, which I'll touch on at the end. But first, I'm just going to go into details on each of these. Links to these reports will all be available. Okay, the canopy cover. Now, the canopy cover in the borough of Islington was estimated, but now we know it's 25%. And that's above the UK urban average of 17%, and the London average that Al showed us earlier of 21%. And I'm really happy with that, especially considering the dense urban nature of Islington. That's great. But it's important that we know what it is, because we need more. Islington has just announced a climate change emergency has been called in, and one of the actions on the back of that is to increase our canopy cover from 25% up to 30% by 2050, and that's to make us more resilient to climate change and increase all those benefits that we know about. So, but I need to plant a lot of trees now. There's no use planting them in 2049, so I can use the evidence that I'm going to gather to try and get to those targets. It was important for me to know this as well, because I didn't want targets based on previous estimates or guesstimation. I wanted targets that I knew would be achievable. Each of the green dots on this plan is a tree canopy. And there's Emirates again, just to give you a bit of scale. That's the football club. And we've proof checked this, and it's pretty darn accurate. Okay, breaking down into wards. Now, each borough is broken down into wards, and ward councillors hold the budgets for tree planting for me. So I needed to know where the trees were in each individual wards. And you can see here, they range from 13.9% down in the south up to 36.7% canopy cover up here in the north. We've got a more affluent residential area. This is really important for me because, as I say, I can use this data to apply for tree planting budgets. Now, the infographics look great as well, don't they? I mean, just being able to show this to people is really, really helpful. The dark green here being the areas of higher density canopy cover. The report also looked at the correlation into crime rates, property prices, hospital admissions, loads of other data that I don't have time to go into right now. So that was the canopy cover in Islington, and next was an inventory report. Now, the reason I wanted this is because we're data rich on the trees we manage. As I say, we inspect and record all our trees on a 3-year cycle. But the information wasn't there in a format that I could easily interpret and use. So here you can see we've got my parks trees, housing trees in the rear gardens, and highways trees. So trees under different ownership. So I can break down the benefits of those trees into the different species, into sizes, into ownerships. It's a great tool in defending the budgets, but also showing how much benefit their trees are doing for the budget holders as an asset. Al's already gone into the Itree and what it can provide for you and what we've had, so I'll skip that one. But these are really interesting to me, the headline figures we had from the inventory. Firstly, 282 species of trees, that's great, but that's probably going to go up. We also use CAVAT in the UK. CAVAT is the capital asset value for amenity trees, and that's hosted on the London Tree Officers Association website, and you should be able to see a link to there as well. The great thing here for me is, look at this, the benefits, the annual benefits to trees, £700,000. It's great for me because my budget for tree pruning and planting is underneath that figure. It's about £680,000. So instantly I can prove to senior management and residents that the trees are paying for themselves largely. This is the percentage population of the tree species. Now, why is this information good for me? Well, if you look here at the ash and the plane, ash particularly in the UK at the moment, I've got 6.2% of my population is ash. They're dying. We have something called ash dieback that is sweeping across the UK and is likely to be followed by emerald ash borer. So now I can flag this up on our risk register. I can predict how much it would cost to remove the ash, the negative impacts that would have on the values identified, and apply for budgets to replace with a forecast on how much and how long it will take. I'm sure you'll agree, it's a great asset for a management tool. Another thing that we've broken down to, and the variables are numerous, but leaf area of ownership is really interesting for me. There is a little bit of a skew here. There's cemeteries outside of Islington, so they don't appear on the Canopy cover report. Okay, well, I know where the trees are in the Canopy cover report. The inventory, I know who owns them and how hard they're working and their value. But now I need to know where I can plant more trees. And the third main report I commissioned was a planting strategy. But I think first we're going to a quick poll. Is that right, Josh? The poll is open.
Yep, the poll is open. Thanks, John. It's great to see those numbers. All right, leave this open for a couple seconds. Still getting a lot of good questions. I don't think we'll have time for all of them, so we'll have to cherry pick them here. But all right, looks like, close this out and share, that about half have a poll, have a tree inventory, and are in progress. Back to you, John.
Great, thank you, Josh. Okay, the tree planting strategy. Tree Economics have taken the previous data and cross-referenced the areas of low tree canopy cover, areas of high social deprivation, and areas within 40 metres of a busy road for increased pollution removal. They also took out the buildings and hard surfaces and the existing trees, and that left me with this heat map of potential planting areas where the benefits are greatest. It's shown in red, going up to green where the benefits are less needed. It's a broad brush approach, but it's great for me. It allows me to evidence-based funding for grants and applications for tree planting budgets. We're not actually going to plant in that little corner of the football pitch. Yeah, we've checked that one out. But I can demonstrate. So why do I need this? Well, it's going to be very ambitious for us to get to 30% canopy cover, considering the pressures we have. And I was really pleased to hear Al talk about trees on buildings, because that's one of my big pushes. Within 10 years, I want to see trees appearing on buildings in Islington. We've got a really good green roof policies, and that needs to be switched out and get trees on there. I'm hoping some of you will already be doing that, but yeah, really looking forward to going back and revisiting our slides on that. Okay, now what I've commissioned and what I've started to use it for. So I've got the canopy cover assessment, I've got the inventory report and the planting strategy, but I've also got this website, among other things. Now, the link to this is at the bottom, and I think Nadine is sharing the link as well with you. But if you drop down onto the maps, it gives you the ecosystem value of trees, which we've got up here, but also air quality, avoided runoff, canopy cover, some tree condition stuff, and amenity values, all broken down into wards. Really beautifully done. So I'm really pleased with that. It's a great tool for residents and for stakeholders to show people what we've been doing. So what's next? Well, quickly, I want the full Itree survey. I've got a missing piece in my puzzle, is the privately owned trees. So I know what I've got and I know where the trees are, but if I'm going to increase the canopy cover and build resilience, I need more trees in public gardens. So I need that full Itree survey. That's the next one. I want to look at my old inventory as well. We've got loads of data. So I was thinking we could get a direction of travel if I look at what we had, what we've got now, and then I will be getting another inventory in a few years' time. We can work out where we're going, see if we're doing the right things. I want to use this information. I'm desperate for a new urban forest master plan. Failing that, if they won't go for the full one, then a new strategy for me. I want to expand that website. I want to get protected trees on there, the cycles of inspection and maintenance, planting, potential planting, loads more detail. Anyway, that's me. Thank you very, very much for listening. Cheers.
Great, thanks, John. All right, I think we have a couple minutes here for some questions. Before we do that, I just want to make sure everybody knows that we do have our next webinar scheduled August 13th for Trees, People, and Technology. And then, John, if you could pull up the ISA CEU code as well.
Yep.
Great, thank you. All right. So again, if you take that code, you can self-report it, or if you answer the survey at the end, you'll get an opportunity to provide your ISA number there, and I'll turn it in for you. So today we've been talking Itree and the urban forest, and looks like got quite a few questions here. So keep them coming a little bit. Wondering, John, do you have any, asking how many hours were put into your Itree projects? Do you have any concept, maybe, if you don't know hours or budget or something around that?
Over several years, we worked out what we wanted. We worked closely with Tricanthus. It probably took about 3 months in total from idea to actually getting delivery from Kenton and from Tricanthus. The cost was around, I should tell everyone, the cost was around £20,000. But we had lots of extras. That wasn't just for the reports that you've seen there. There was a planning policy review, lots of other stuff, and there were a lot of very informative meetings with Kenton and the team to work out what we could have and what information we want in the future as well.
Great. Follow-up question here for you, John. Different than that, but Sharon knows Islington well and is curious. If you're looking to influence policy for trees on buildings through like a planning, through your planning process?
I managed to sneak in on a local plan that new buildings, new developments in Islington now have to consider trees on buildings. There's a very strong flat roof, green roof policy, but I'm really keen to get where you've got green roofs built in. We're looking at green, blue roofs, so an extensive green roof with water capture as well. And where you've got that designed in, you can switch that out for soil, I'm sure, and you can start getting trees on buildings. So if I'm ever going to hit that 30% canopy cover, yeah, I need trees on buildings. And we're starting to get it into policy. We're hoping the next iteration of policy in 5 years' time will be that developers will have to prove that they can't put trees on buildings. Not that they could have to consider it, but they can't do it. And so it's a building process over the next 10, 15 years.
Oh, wow, that's really cool. Al, a couple Itree questions here for you. One is talking about, the concept, is it only applicable for mature trees? And follow up with that, can you provide examples of maybe how it can be used for young trees, and maybe talk maybe about the forecast tool a little bit?
Yeah, sure, Josh. You can use it on mature trees, but you can also use it on small trees too. And there is a forecasting tool in there. In Itree terminology, usually 2.5 centimeters or 1 inch diameter is considered a tree. But it does allow you to enter in smaller trees, probably not like a whip size, but you can actually create a population in the forecasting tool and then forecast that, project that out over time, and get some ecosystem services and structural growth over time. So you do have some elements, but forecasting is a bit of, you're taking sometimes information and trying to determine like what is mortality over time. So there's a lot of uncertainty in that. So I'm careful with using that as a planning tool so much as looking at a tool of potential and possibility. So with that information, I always try to preface how forecasts can be used. So yeah, I have used that for some folks in India where we put in a population of trees that they planted, that they typically plant, and try to forecast some ecosystem services over time, since Delhi is a new functional location in there. So that's a possibility.
Great. And then speaking of Itree Eco, I'm wondering about collection methods and specifically if there's an offline option, data collection method for a country that doesn't have very good cell signal. They have, they're specifically saying they don't have very good 4G or data. So
Yeah, that's common, and the folks in the Philippines had that same challenge, and I think they use other tools like Open Data Kit. I don't know if that works offline. I've been experimenting with EpiCollect. And so these are different applications that allow you to collect data so you can kind of create, it's almost like a parallel list of trees that are common, and then set that up so that you can then import the data into Itree Eco. So we don't have that system. So our system requires some type of connectivity, but once you have that on a phone, it's cached and you can continue collecting data, but that might be a problem for some people. So to do it offline or in an app that runs on a phone, you'd have to find that and then use the import system to bring data in. But that's actually common, for many people, especially consultants that have their own system. So there are plenty of tools out there. I'm just not familiar with the capabilities of all of them, but that's one of the more common ways. If you think of Eco as just a secondary tool that I could bring any information in through an import process. So EpiCollect, Open Data Kit could be potential, and there are probably others.
yeah, I was going to suggest that import tool is a really high function. So Al, last question for you, and I got a couple more for you, John. But can you speak, John, to how the Itree Canopy estimates the ecosystem services without field data, basically?
So in the States, we have county level information that's derived through analysis of forest inventory analysis that allows us to develop county level multipliers. So we have an understanding of some composition of species at the county level. So we develop these multipliers. So it's different, for the state of Massachusetts compared to Wyoming, compared to South Dakota, just because canopy cover differs. And so we use that and also urban information that we have to develop per unit area of canopy multipliers, so that when you do a canopy survey and determine that I have 20% canopy cover in an area, we then use those multipliers for your locality to then estimate what is that unit area of canopy providing in terms of pollution removal or carbon sequestration, based on the back end data that we have pre-processed for those locations. That's why, to me, canopy is something for estimating canopy conifer. It's great for international tools, but for estimating ecosystem services, it's a little bit more applicable for the US. But that's a little bit of how the processing goes in the back end.
Great, thanks, Al. And then final question here for you, John. Hopefully it's a short one. Just I thought it was interesting. And did you find that with your priority planting plan and your planting strategy, that the areas that are available to plant were the more difficult ones to plant?
Lots of them were in private gardens outside of my control, so yes, they would be. We've done a lot of tree planting in the last 10, 15 years, so we've definitely saturated the easy areas. It also took out the highways though, so I'm expecting to plant more on highways. But short answer, yes. Slightly longer answer, the green spaces we have in Islington as well are saturated. We wouldn't have any more trees in our parks, otherwise we'd end up with woodlands, and our parks managers don't want woodlands. It's predominantly tricky places. Definitely, we're definitely finding we're having to spend more money to get canopy cover in now. It's not going to be easy.
Yeah, I think Kenton has a saying that I like when he talks about the tree planting strategies, about it doesn't replace thinking. Just because you have the map and you have the data, it doesn't mean it's gonna magically.
It's a bit of it's a very good broad brush demonstration of where you should be planting, but going down into the individual location, you need proof checking. But I think you're right. You would invariably find that a lot of those locations, if they were easy to plant, they'd have been planted.
Great. Well, hey guys, thank you so much for your time and your expertise and your knowledge sharing today. I think it's been really helpful. There are still a couple, or actually several questions here that I think we can answer on a follow-up. Several of them relate to the concept of finding more information on Itree. So, you know, I shared out the link, itreetools.org. There's lots of resources. Al, a couple people asking for some of those international examples. I'm not sure if those are up there, but I know they can find your information and maybe get those resources from you. But again, thank you guys for your time, and you know, appreciate your knowledge and expertise and sharing it with everybody today. So, and I hope wherever you are that you stay safe and find you know, how benefit the urban forest is for you and everybody out there. So thanks everybody. Hope you have a good day.
Take care.
Everyone, thank you so much for joining.
Cheers.